Good morning. Today's lesson is on reproductive strategies, and this is a very short section that usually counts about 9 to 11 marks in your matric exam. So here are the notes for reproductive strategies, but because it's such a short section, I usually use the tables at the end to explain the section. Okay, so firstly, before we talk about anything else and the tables, we must know what a reproductive strategy is. And a reproductive strategy is a mechanism or a behavior that is put in place by an organism to ensure successful fertilization. And if fertilization takes place, then the species can reproduce and survival of the species can take place. Now, before we even talk about fertilization, we know fertilization is when a haploid sperm nucleus fuses with the haploid ovum nucleus to form a diploid zygote. Unfortunately, you must give the chromosome numbers in your definition. So this is what fertilization is. Okay, so obviously external fertilization is when the haploid sperm nucleus fuses with the haploid ovum nucleus to form a diploid zygote outside the female's body, and a haploid sperm nucleus fuses with the haploid ovum nucleus to form a zygote will be inside the female's body. So please just remember this is the most correct definition for fertilization. Now let's talk about external versus internal fertilization. Now, external fertilization takes place in aquatic organisms, animals like fish, frogs, and terrestrial animals, of course, like birds and mammals. Internal fertilization takes place. Now, here, external fertilization, the females and the males lay a large amount of sperm and ovum. And the reason for that is some of these eggs and the sperm can be damaged by the water currents, washed away by water currents, or it could be eaten by predators. A reason why these organisms live in water is because the sperm and the egg needs the water to survive. In other words, the water will prevent dehydration. Only a few embryos survive because there's a high mortality rate due to the water currents or the predators. Very few fertilization takes place, and that's why to ensure that fertilization takes place, there's a large number of sperm and ovum that are produced. It's not something that we must stress about. These organisms reproduce many times in the year to compensate for that. Internal fertilization, right? Here, it's many sperm inserted into the female's body, and obviously one or fewer eggs or ovum are produced. The sperm does not exposed to environmental conditions, so it won't get exposed, won't get damaged. There won't be predation that will take place or washed away. So fewer ovum and more sperm ensures that fertilization will take place. And because of that, fewer offspring and the breeding season or the breeding rate or fertility rate or copulation rate is less because of the high amount of offspring that will be produced or the greater chances of fertilization or the offspring that will be produced. So that is external versus internal. Make sure you also know examples of these organisms as well. The next strategies are ovipary, ovovivipary, and vivipary. Here, ovipary is when an egg is laid outside the female's body. Please always remember that. It is on one of our Gauteng papers. They don't just say egg laying because you see ovipary is also egg laying. Fish and reptiles and birds, because the egg is laid outside the female's body, there's no protection from the mother. The yolk nourishes the embryo, and it could be internal or external fertilization. Vivipary, that's humans or mammals. We give birth to live young. Yes, the embryo is protected by the mother and nourished by the placenta and only internal fertilization. Now, ovovivipary, please make sure when you are spelling this, you don't leave out a V. All right, some just say ovopary. It's ovovivipary. Please make sure you know how to spell this word. It's important. Now here, the female forms an egg inside her body. The egg hatches inside her body and she gives birth to live young. So if you can see, it's a combination of both. It's not actually per se an egg. With most reptiles like snakes, it's more like a pod. And the pod forms inside the female's body, hatches inside the female's body, and she gives birth to live young. So it's a combination of both. It's a certain species of sharks, such as the basking shark, and many reptiles. Here, the embryo is protected by the mother. The major difference is there's no placenta connection. There'll still be yolk, right, in the so-called egg, and it's only internal fertilization. So that is the other reproductive strategies. This precocial and altricial comes out all the time, all the time. Now, altruism means to give of yourself to help somebody, okay? And that's what parents do. Some of the parents give of themselves to help their child. So here it talks about only in the birds. But precocial and altricial can also be applied to any organism. So don't be scared in your matric exam if they apply to any organism. So here they say chicken, ducks, geese for precocial, altricial, pigeons, and woodpeckers. Now precocial, we'll do precocial first. 40% of the yolk is formed in the egg. So there's 40% of the yolk. So for this female to produce a layer egg with 40% of yolk, it takes a lot of energy. So it's a large amount of energy needed for the female to produce a large amount of yolk. And the reason why there's a large amount of yolk is because these birds or these organisms are in advanced state. They advance, so they need more energy to be in an advanced state. So when they're born, they have feathers, their eyes are open, they can move, they can look around for food. Okay, there isn't parental care, so that's why they need to look for their own food. If it comes to birds, the birds lay their nest on the ground, so they can find food, and they're usually found in an area where there is less predators. Okay, and then we know the eggs are much larger for yolk to allow for the advanced state, advanced development. Altricial, only 25% yolk. So here the female doesn't need so much energy to lay such a egg with a small amount of yolk, so she doesn't need a lot of energy. And also, this bird is in an undeveloped state. Its eyes are closed, it's naked, it has no feathers, it's not mobile, it's helpless. So the parents have to look after them. The parents have to go keep them safe. They have to bring food for them. So usually one bird will get food and the other one will look after them and take turns. And here they are found in areas where there's predators, so that's why the parents build nests on the trees away from the predators. And then little or no parental care. Little parental care, more young are produced. The energy looking after the organism is very, very low because the parents don't look after them. There's no parental care, that's why most of them will obviously die. And then because the parents don't look after them, there's little less to the parents, and the parents don't use energy for looking after the young. Again, I told you, parents like these organisms, they reproduce many times to ensure that they try to produce some offspring and ensure survival of the species. Parental care, there's usually one or few young produced. The energy the parents spend is a lot, and they are high risk to the parents because the parents spend a lot of energy. There is parental care, and the parents use that energy to look after their child from the time they're born until their time they can look after themselves. And there's very few organisms that die because they are cared by their parents. The next thing, so that was the tables that we've done. And the last thing I must talk to you about is an amniotic egg. Now, an amniotic egg, if you look at the eggs of aquatic organisms, they have a very moist shell, and it's more suited to living in water or moist environments. Now, the amniotic egg is the normal eggs that we have. It's like a normal egg that you eat. And the reason why the amniotic egg formed is to allow an organism from water to live on land. So the structure is, you must know adaptations of the amniotic egg. So the amniotic egg has a shell that is made up of calcium. So it's a calcium-based shell. Okay, and calcium, is hard, and it's a hard shell to protect the development of the embryo. The yolk sac has a lot of nutrients, and the nutrients are there to provide energy for the development of the embryo. The chorion is a very thin membrane, and the thin membrane allows for gases to enter and leave for gases exchange. The allantois is another membrane that allows for wastes to be stored. So it allows for waste to be removed and plays a role in excretion. And then the amnion is a thin membrane that surrounds the embryo with amniotic fluid. This is very, very important. The amniotic fluid acts as a temperature regulator. Temperature regulator means keeps the baby warm, the offspring or the embryo warm when it's cold and cool when it's hot. Protects the embryo from desiccation or dehydration, and protects the embryo from mechanical injury by absorbing the shock. So these are some of the adaptations of an amniotic egg that you must know. And that is your section on reproductive strategies. It is a very short section. So if you need to make notes, let me know. I can send you some of the notes, or you can pause and you can write your notes. So thank you.